Hey guys, so I wanted to test something, run it by you. So there's this little men's retreat we're going on, and I have something prepared for it, um, and I wanted to practice. So uh, I want to talk about effective dependence, and that's what it's called, effective dependence. And I think that a lot of men, it's also subtitled "Why We Don't Like Pointless Meetings." So I think a lot of us are pretty well opposed to pointless meetings. And but the problem we're solving is that it's hard to seek God when you don't want anything from Him. And so let's talk about how your desires can lead you to Him and to real dependence. And when I mean dependence, I don't mean like this unnecessary dependence on like a drug or anything like that. What I'm talking about is effective dependence, dependence that actually helps you deal with life, a dependence that grows. And we'll talk more about that later. So, why should we talk about what we want, right? Christians are always like, well, oh, what do you want? Oh, I should pray more, right? That's the righteous, holy response. And then there's another direction we go where we're just in our private time. We wouldn't tell anybody this, but we're just like, well, I really want a better job, or I want more money. I want a car. I want a nicer car. I want if you're single, I want a beautiful wife, or whatever, right? I want this. Sometimes you want a family. Well, what do you want? And so the question is, if I don't want anything from God, if I think that everything that I want comes from the world, if I think God spun everything up, spun the world up, which I used to believe as a Christian, just spun everything up, and then He's letting it, roll. And what's the point of prayer then? Well, what that means, that assumption basically means that I should go out and I should try to get what I can get, and I should try to do what I can do, and hopefully do it with biblical principles, right? I don't lie, cheat, and steal, or whatever. So there's the ultra holiness. I should pray more. Oh, I should give more to the poor, or I should give more to charity. I should volunteer more. And then there's the ultra worldly, which is, I want a better job title. I want a better car. I just want to look better. And so these are two directions. And the ultra holy one is actually, I wonder if that may be the harder one to work with. Because if you're ultra holy, you're not really being honest. You're saying, I should pray more, but do you pray more? No. Well, why not? Well, if you believed that you really should, you would, because you would have a reason for that. Why should I pray more? What's the point of praying more? And so, uh, if your answer is so that I can have a better family, so that I can, all these things, well, then that gets us back to the worldliness one, which is helpful, because the worldly one actually is, that's our real motives. And so, why should we want to talk about what we want? Because it exposes our heart. And if we're for a Christian, I'm not talking about for somebody who just walks into a church and starts praying, or just kind of believes that God's out there somewhere, but hasn't really admitted I'm a sinner. But for the real Christian, it exposes your heart and it submits yourself to His will, and it adjusts and to His adjustment, and sometimes to surgery, which isn't comfortable. But why should we talk about what we want? Because it's a starting place. It's a place of, like, let's get to the place of honesty. What do I really want for my life? Because if I can expose that, I can expose the difference between who I am and who I want to be. And that's really what we're trying to get to, is that difference, because that is a topic for prayer. Okay, um, so what happens? Let's talk about what happens when we pray for worldly things. So if we're honest and we say, okay, I don't really want to pray more, like that's just kind of the Christian answer. I don't really want to give more to charity. What I really want is a nicer house and a better job, and I want to feel like I'm on a career path. I want fulfillment, right? Or I want to feel like I'm necessary, I'm needed, or something like that, right? If or I want to feel like I'm tough. I want to feel like I'm a man, right? So we start to get to these things, and it's like, okay, cool. Now we're getting somewhere. And I can tell you tons of testimonies of men who once they got honest about this, they got strong, which is ultimately the goal. Strength in him, proper dependence, proper relationship with God, and the effectiveness that comes from that. All right, so what'll happen if we pray for worldly things? If we just start like, all right, God, I want a better job. I don't know how else to say it. And then we start praying for it. Uh, we start praying for that. So what happens is the godly heart who wants these things, and what I'm saying is you're saved, you're a godly heart, but you still want these things, right? Like so many of, like all of us. What happens is the godly heart will adjust, will conform to him, and will have strength and success. In other words, he's going to turn your desires wholly and then into reality. They may not look the same once he's done with them, once you've prayed for a year or whatever. I mean, if it's a big thing, right? We're talking about, over time. It may not look the same. You will have changed. You will become someone who's much more centered. And so I can tell you that from experience, the things I wanted came with so much baggage that I didn't think of. And as I started working through that and I started praying, God help me, I was desperate. I just wanted this, like, here's who I saw the ultimate man, and here's where I saw myself, right? And once I realized and I started praying and God showed me the baggage that was inherent in my assumptions of what a real man was. And as I started praying through that, I started realizing, like, wow, that's a trap laid by Satan, told to us, like, this is how you be a man, right? Or this is how you be a man. And God started straightening that path. And as he straightened the path, I started losing baggage and I started having much more clarity and much more like bulletproofness, right? Which isn't a word, but but it's this idea that like anti-fragility. When you keep things simple and you allow God to straighten your path, you have to remember less. It's kind of like my path before was a lie. It was something I hadn't thought through. It was something that I just thought that men did. And then as God straightened it, it became true. And when it became true, it became strong and solid and firm because it was conformed to his will. And so once I started conforming to his will, and I still am, he actually was able to turn so much of what I wanted into reality in a way that he is glorified into today. Until today, even till today, I'm able to realize and thank him for all the things that he's done. I want to, before I get to point 3, which is what should we do, I want to point out that parenthetically, like, who cares though, right? Who cares about all this stuff? Who cares about holiness? Who cares about why does it matter that I seek God? Why does it matter that I have desires, right? That because he's put in me these desires. It's just they're corrupted. They're corrupted by the world. The definition's off, right? But who cares if I conform, if I have desires, which are necessary, and then who cares if I conform them to his will and then accomplish them? Who cares in the big scheme of things? Does it even really matter? God's going to do his will anyway. He's going to be glorified. Well, here's why it matters, because there are people who will care, and that's your wife. You think she only cares about, keeping the house clean or whatever, right? And not making a mess. And so, like, any family stuff, she complains because, oh, you're making a mess when you're playing with the kids or whatever. She'll say these things, but it's because oftentimes because she doesn't really know. She doesn't really know where are you going? Where does this fit into our life? Is it right or is it wrong? Like all these things you're talking about for your career or for your future or whatever, if it's not conformed to his will, you're just going to be like, you're always going to be feeling like this is selfish of me. But it matters. Your career matters. To your kids, does your career matter? Your house, your family, the kind of car you drive, the home you have, does this stuff matter to your kids? Well, let me ask you, if you have a safe home that is, let's imagine a home where there are books, and the books are old books, great books, where kids are getting read to, where There's no Netflix. There's no, YouTube being streamed into the house with all the commercials, and where you actually judge the what your daughter wears going out the door, and you're not even sorry. You're not even like, you don't let anybody talk you out of it because you know right from wrong because you're in the Word. And where, like, let's just go the extreme, like only good food is brought in, and so that your family eats good food, good healthy food, and develops good habits, where you insist that your family go hiking, work out, do a little bit of that, to make, and then morally you're teaching them the right things. And when they go, when they, as homeschool kids, or when they go to school, I don't know, maybe you even do that and just say, look, we're not, the kids that are around, the teachers, educated in these schools, coming from, these big universities, uh, I just don't want that for my kids. You just go the extreme, and you just say, this is going to be a house of holiness. And when your kids talk back and you say, or when your child says they're in sin or something, you're not like, oh, well, I understand, you're like, all right, I love you, but you're wrong, right? How do we fix it? How do we need to pray? Tell me about it. Like, let's talk it through. Oh, you think this is good? Oh, you think your sin is a good thing? Okay, well, let's talk about that, right? We're not putting up with lies in this house because it's a safe place for holiness, right? So let me ask that question again. Who cares? And that's my timer. Who cares about that? Who cares if you create a home like that? Well, your wife cares, your kids care. Your wife may have something to say about it. She may not like how you're doing it at first. That's stuff you need to work through and pray through. Your kids care. Your neighbors are going to care, right? They're going to benefit from this. The United States is going to benefit from this. Now, that may sound like an overstatement, but think about this. As a one person, I can't change anything that's been done. I can't fix all this stuff that's been done in our society. I can't fix all this stuff. I'm only one guy with a limited scope of effectiveness. But let's assume that God is able to mobilize. God is able to change. God is able to change the hearts of a whole country. He's done it before in history. Let's say he's able to do that. How do you think that happens? Do you think it's this emotional kind of like, some emotional leader stands up and gets everybody riled up and everybody's just like carried away by emotion? Or is it possible that he's using men to set a standard and to actually create a holy place, and that your effectiveness in creating this holy place in your home isn't being duplicated throughout your town, isn't being duplicated throughout your state and your region, and then your country, and then the world? Who's to say that that's not what's going on? And so we need to have hope. And then finally, who cares? God cares. He makes it clear in scripture what we're supposed to do. He's a God of order, and he wants you to create and maintain order in your home. For that, you have to know what order is. So order is defined by the goal, right? How do you ordering what? How? By what standard do I order? What direction do I order? Well, you're ordering toward a goal. And so what's your goal? And the goal is first you tell God what you want, tell him what you really want, and then say, God, help me to understand my goal. Help me to understand the direction I need to go in. Help me to understand this whole thing, this whole commission that you've given me in my family. That's who cares. Your career matters to him. It's not just something that you want. Put it in subjection to him. It matters. It's important. No matter how much your wife doesn't understand it, or whatever. Your house, the order of your house matters. Your what kind of house you have, the layout of the house might even matter, right? At a small degree, but it still matters. We know that the tent of the wicked, or the tent of the righteous, is so much better than the house of the wicked. So we know that. But we also know that God has given you a desire to build, and oftentimes he gives us money, and we get to go out and find a house that's perfect for our family. That stuff's cool and it matters. And we think it's superficial when it's time to pray. We don't think, we don't think those things, we should pray for, but they matter. God's given these to you. Make a good choice, right? Pray about your investments, pray about your job, pray about all those things. And your family, they matter. How your family interacts, it matters. Are you and your wife constantly like, you can't bring up anything that's possibly in any way controversial to each other because you can't handle any kind of like lighthearted argument about something. You can't make fun of each other or and yourself, during that time. Um, and I think this gets to this whole myth that men are disposable. And the fact is, men are essential. And even though we are called to be the ones to give our lives, that's our joy, to be able to give our lives for our family and for things that are bigger, and to sacrifice our bodies sometimes. That's good. But in sacrificing our bodies and in going out there and fighting and battling and winning and bringing home the meat or whatever, right? Bringing home the money, um, men are essential. And so it matters. And when you die, let it be this awesome man of God who dies, this awesome man who's just like the example for other men, example for these men in the world that we all admire in the manosphere or whatever, right? These example, let the Christian men be the ones who are fighting hardest and making the most sense. Okay. Further on my notes. So what do we do? So what do we do? How do we do this? So I think the word is expose. And so we've been talking so far about prayer, and now I want to bring in this idea of brotherhood and fellowship, because this is essential. And so there are a bunch of verses. I want to go. Proverbs 18:1 says, "Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment." So isolation, we're talking about prayer, and we're talking about brotherhood too. And I think both these apply, in my mind, these apply to both. Isaiah 41:8, friend of God. So the offspring of Abraham, my friend, is what he says in the verse. So it's like the offspring, the last part of that verse is that he calls Abraham his friend. John 15:14 and 15, it says, "You are my friends." Jesus says this. "You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you." Did I start recording? Yeah, I started recording. Good. Yeah, it says recording. Friendship. So let's talk about friendship for a second. So Proverbs 13:20 says, "Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise." Proverbs 22:24 through 25 says, "Make no friendship with a man given to anger, nor go with a wrathful man, lest you learn his ways and entangle yourself in a snare." This works the opposite too, right? I mean, this is all talking about relationships and how things work. How do relationships work? Proverbs 27:9, "The sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. The truth comes out." Proverbs 27:6. And I think that works both ways. When I'm honest with you and I tell you bad things about yourself, that happens. But then also when I tell you good things about yourself, you're like, Chris tells me bad things, but he also tells me good things. And so I believe the good things way more. And I trust the bad things. I trust the critique more. And both those things are good for me, because now I can encourage you, and I can also exhort you and say, hey, what you're doing is wrong. Now go pray about it. If you don't agree with me, go pray about it. Or I'm going to bring, if it's a sin issue, I'm going to bring, and you're like, no, I don't think so. I'm going to bring another brother and talk to you. And if that happens, we're going to, and that doesn't work, we're going to bring it to the church. Because you know why? Because we're not tolerating sin. We're creating a space where Christians can get together and get built up. We're not just like, oh yeah, you're a brother, even though you're, living in sin. We're not, that's not what we do. We create those standards. Okay, let's keep going. 27:6. Proverbs 27:6, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy." So enemies are politicians. They're sycophants. They say what you want to hear in front of you, and then behind your back, they lie. They slander you. And then Ephesians 4, 11, 12. And he gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, shepherds, and teachers to equip the saints for the work of ministry, for the building up of the body of Christ. And so he gives us those roles and gives us those roles. And then he also gives you the fathership role and the leader of the family role and the husband role. And now we need to drive those home. We need to take them home. We need to run the race, and we need to reach those goals, and we need to do it fast. And we need to do it now. And there's no reason to wait, guys. This isn't pointless meetings. This is progress. We need to pray like he's going to answer that prayer, and we need to look for it. And then we need to keep praying about the next thing that we realize about that topic and move on and build. I'm getting a little excited. So what do we do? We get together, we expose ourselves, and we expose each other. And we do this gradually, respectfully, but not too respectfully, and honestly. So gradually, and what I mean by gradually is that, guys, you're building a church, you're building a community, you're building a brotherhood, and that doesn't happen overnight. And you're building trust, and someone might tell you, hey, I struggle with pride, right? And you're like, okay, tell me about that. And then they say, pride, whatever. We all know that's the classic Christian sin. Everybody's like, oh, I struggle with pride. It's the non-embarrassing sin that everybody, but maybe that's the first thing they say. And you're like, all right, cool. We'll talk about pride for now. I'm sure that's not the worst thing you've done. Well, sure. Let's talk about pride for now. I could scoot over. Look at this. Gradually, but then the next time, like as they see your countenance, as they see you showing up, and as they see you taking them seriously, and as you take them seriously, and as you seek to grow the church by doing that, by building that relationship, being yourself, just enjoying their fellowship, and then just bringing it up when you can, and letting it happen gradually, and then making time for it to happen, for sure. Like plan time to pray about stuff together. You need to make those things happen, and those are the disciplines that we need, but gradually, and then respectfully. And what I mean by respectfully is just, if somebody, you want to show them respect as a man. You don't want to be like, you're not worth my time. If you did that, then now you're arrogant, and you haven't laid the foundation in your own heart for that fellowship. So do it respectfully. But here's what I don't mean by respectfully is, don't be afraid to call someone out quick. If they start talking like they have weird ideas, like, just start challenging the first one, right? Just start talking about it. Just bring it out, expose it to the light. If they have weird views on things, like, expose them, And yeah, you can choose your battles and everything, and you want to do it wisely, but you don't want to be so respectful that you can't tell someone when they're going wrong, where you can't, like, the ideal is you develop the ability to just joke with them and call them out on stuff, and then laugh at yourself, and then realize that it's not the end of the world. Their sin is not the end of the world. Their belief in a wrong thing is not the end of the world, right? For you're still a Christian. You need to realize that, hey, maybe they're not even a Christian, and you have to realize that it's possible. But and then honestly, and I guess that kind of goes with that respectful thing, right? It's the honesty. So gradually, respectfully, and then honestly. And I think the honestly modifies the respectfully, because respectfully is like, look, you're another man. I respect you. I respect you as a man. And then the honestly is like, I respect you so much that I'm going to tell you the truth, because that's what we're here for. That's the kind of group we're creating right now. Understand, but don't empathize and don't affirm. So there are too many people out there like, I'm no better than you. Let me get in the place where you're at. And that's fine. I mean, in some ways that's like, yeah, you're not better than them. And we all sin, and we don't know the extent of the other person's sin. We don't know how God judge. We don't know. The Bible doesn't tell us one sin is worse than the other, but it doesn't tell us that it's not. And that's a mystery. A little bit of a mystery for us. but don't affirm, right? Don't be like, uh, don't affirm the sin. Don't be like, oh yeah, it makes sense why you lost your temper. Anybody would have done that. That totally makes sense. Maybe say like, yeah, I might have lost my temper too, but it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it okay. And you need to work on that. You're right. You need to work on that. So like, let's talk about how to work on it. You're not letting them off the hook. Uh, I don't respect that. If you let me off the hook, I'm going to be like, what? What? No, that's not what we're here for. If you're my brother and you're my respected, brother in this, I want you to tell me. Don't, because then I'll lose respect for you. Because I'll just be like, oh, afraid to call people out. Oh, he's a politician. Oh, he's just trying to. I really look. That's not what we're building here. That's not what's going to make me better. That's not what's going to make me stronger. Is people telling me what I need to hear, what they think I want to hear. So, but I do want you to respect me. Don't treat me like a kid, right? Um, but be honest with me. So understand, don't empathize, don't affirm the sin. You can affirm the motive. You can just be like, yeah, that's being called being human, right? Um, don't beat yourself up too much. Uh, and you can say that if the person is actually coming because they want to change. And then, but here's the point: we don't empathize and affirm, but we do expose motives, talk about those motives, develop our understanding of those motives over time. And what I mean by that is that, our worldly desires, they start gradually becoming less worldly. We may end up still wanting the same house that you wanted, right? The superficial desire for this particular house or kind of house, or, you know, um, better job title. That may still look the same in the end, but it's going to be different. The way you feel about it is going to be different. The way you need it is going to be way different. I mean, you want to talk about being firm and confident, is you don't need stuff. You don't need what the world gives you. You don't need what the world's trying to bribe you with. It's kind of hard to bribe someone who doesn't need anything from the world. That's really what we're talking about here. Expose motives and stir each other up to righteousness. Again, I want to point out that this is, I call this effective dependence, why we don't like pointless meetings. And the point is, let's give ourselves something that we care about, that we can pray about, and then let's develop that. Let's develop that. Let's develop it in prayer, and let's develop that in the brotherhood. Because when we do those two things, what I think we're going to find is that all those verses that I read to you about friendship and prayer, all those things, you're going to start seeing that this is what life is all about: is developing you and developing you into conformity with who God's made you. All right. And so the rules, and this is for the group when we get together. The rules is we're going to break up into groups of 3. We're going to go through the questions, be back in a certain amount of time. But I will tell you some rules for prayer that I actually made up. And they're not, I don't know if they're scriptural or not, but I do think everything should be focused. And so I invited, a few weeks ago, I invited some people to show up at my house for 30 minutes at lunchtime at my house. And I'm in the back, and it was my workout time. And at the end of my workout time, we're going to pray. And so one of the guys showed up for workout time, two more showed up for prayer. And so we all 4 of us prayed during that 30-minute time. We started on time and we ended on time. And that's key, because then people can show up and not feel like they're going to get like kind of bogged down in these long conversations they can't leave in the middle of the day at their lunchtime, right? The other thing is, the other rule is that we're not going to pray about anybody who's not in the circle, right? And it's not that we shouldn't pray for other people. It's just that that's not the scope of this time. This time is to pray for the guys in the circle. I want to pray for your business. I want to pray for your, job. I want to pray for what's going on, what's like right in front of you. And let's conform ourselves to God, right, in that situation. And then what was the third thing? Oh yeah, it was, we're not going to show up and talk about prayer. We're not going to show up and talk about all the things we need to pray for. And then the 30 minutes is over and we haven't prayed. And so we hit the ground. I think there was a couple minutes of greeting. I think within 5 minutes, we were in prayer, and we stopped, and then we prayed some more, and it was awesome. And so much more to talk about, but thanks for letting me explore what I'm going to be teaching on, what I'm going to be talking about, and how we're going to run this weekend's retreat. So I appreciate it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll go from there.